My parents stole my entire inheritance to buy my sister a house. I took them to court, won everything, and left them with nothing but regret. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and I've always been the scapegoat of my family. My sister Haley is 3 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, the world seemed to revolve around her. When she turned 10, she got a brand new pink bike with streamers and a custom nameplate. When I turned 10, I got her old hand-me-down, spray-painted black, with the streamers barely ripped off. She got ballet lessons. I got told to mow the lawn. Every birthday, every holiday, every random Tuesday, it was always about Haley. New phones, shopping sprees, private tutoring, even a used Honda for her 16th. I asked for help with community college tuition and got told, "You're a man. You'll figure it out." That sentence became the soundtrack of my life. My parents had a way of spinning everything. "She's more sensitive," Mom would say. "You're stronger," Dad insisted, like it was a compliment. But all I heard was, "You don't need love. You don't need help. You're on your own." So I learned to survive alone. I got a part-time job at 15, applied for every scholarship I could, paid rent while living at home just so I wouldn't freeload, while Haley lived rent-free in her college apartment, fully funded by my parents. I stopped expecting fairness, stopped hoping for it. Birthdays came and went without calls. When I graduated college, they didn't show up. But when Haley got a certificate from a 6-week marketing boot camp, they threw a backyard party with string lights and a custom cake. And through it all, kept quiet. Until one day, I found out just how far they were willing to go to keep me small, and her on top. But I wouldn't stay silent forever. If there was one person in my life who ever made me feel seen, it was my grandfather, my mom's dad. Everyone called him Pop, but to me, he was just ... home. Top didn't play favorites. He never once compared me to Haley or told me to man up. He showed up to my school plays when no one else did, slipped $20 bills into my hand after report cards and whispered, "Don't tell your mom. This is just for you." When I couldn't afford textbooks my freshman year of college, he drove an hour to bring me used ones he found at a local Sayland, packed them in a box with socks and homemade cookies. He didn't say much, but his love was steady, quiet, constant. We used to sit on his back porch, him drinking black coffee, me sipping cheap orange soda. And he'd give me these little life lessons in between bites of peanut brittle. Work hard, but don't let them break you. There's dignity in silence, but sometimes silence is how they win. One day, after I told him about how my parents accidentally forgot my birthday again, he looked at me with this slow, tired sadness and said, "They won't always be able to keep you small, kid. When I'm gone, I'll make sure you have something to build your life on." I didn't think much of it then. I just nodded, blinked hard, and tried not to cry. But years later, that sentence would come back to me like a lightning strike. Pop wasn't stupid. He knew how my parents operated, how they twisted things, how they smothered me with neglect. I think deep down, he didn't trust them either, and I had no idea the quiet steps he took to protect me. Not till after he was gone. Pop died on a Wednesday morning, heart attack in his sleep. No pain, the doctors said. Just gone. When my mom called to tell me, her voice was flat, like she was reading a grocery list. Dad passed. The funeral's Saturday. Where's something nice? I remember standing in my tiny apartment kitchen, holding the phone like it was a brick. My knees gave out before the tears came. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, but I remembered the silence. It felt like the world lost its only anchor that at the funeral. The air was cold not just outside, but between us all. The church pews were half empty, no slideshow, no speeches. Just a basic service, a quick burial, and then we were told to head to my parents' house for light refreshments. Haley showed up late, complaining about her car. Stalled twice on the way. "Here," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I told Dad we should have just bought the new one. I stared at her, stunned. Pop hadn't been in the ground 2 hours. My dad hovered by the door, greeting guests like he was hosting a BBQ. My mom barely looked at me. No one cried. No one said his name out loud. I pulled my mother aside in the kitchen. "Did Pop leave anything behind? A will?" he said. She cut me off. "There's nothing. Your grandfather's estate was a mess. He didn't leave much. He wasn't good with paperwork." I nodded, didn't argue. But something inside me cracked. Pop wasn't careless. He was methodical. He once alphabetized his spices and labeled his extension cords. The man didn't sneeze without a backup plan. Still, they were my parents. I wanted to believe them. Needed to. For now, I let it go. But deep down, I felt something was already being stolen. 3 months after the funeral, I was driving across town to pick up a Craigslist bookshelf when I passed a house that made me hit the brakes. It was familiar, an old Craftsman that had sat empty for years. Except now, it had a fresh coat of paint, new shutters, and a shiny brass mailbox. A bright red sold sign stood in the yard like a flag waving in my face. And there, on the porch, struggling with a potted fern, was Haley Dott. At first I thought I was hallucinating. But then I saw her boyfriend unloading boxes from the back of a moving van. My sister moving into a newly renovated home, alone on a part-time marketing gig. I pulled over and got out. "Haley, what is this?" She looked surprised for a split second, then rolled her eyes. "Oh, hey, yeah, it's mine now." "Yours?" I asked. "How?" She smirked. "Relax. It's just a small gift from Grandpa's estate. Mom and Dad said it was the least they could do. I needed a fresh start." The words stung like salt in an open wound. A gift from his estate. Later that night, I called my parents. My dad sounded annoyed. "We already told you there wasn't much left. Haley needed help, and your grandfather would have wanted her to have it. What about me?" I asked. "You're doing fine," my mom said sharply. "She's been struggling. We just balance things out." I hung up without another word, but my hands were shaking. Pop had told me he'd make sure I had something to build a future on. He promised, and now my sister was living in a house I couldn't even dream of affording. Something was off. I could feel it. So I started digging. Not for closure, for the truth. It came in a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name, printed neatly in black ink. I almost threw it in the trash with the usual junk until I saw the tiny embossed seal in the corner. Samuel E. Klein, attorney at law. My pulse quickened. Inside was a short letter dated weeks earlier, but delayed due to probate processing, and beneath it, a scanned copy of Pop's will. I read the first line over and over. I, Robert L. Whitmore, being of sound mind, hereby leave 100% of my estate property, savings, and asset to my grandson. Me. I dropped to the floor. Not from shock, because I had always known, somewhere deep in my bones, I knew Pop meant it when he said, "I'll make sure you have something to build your life on," but to see it in writing. Legal, signed, witnessed, notarized, undeniable. I could barely breathe. The next day, I drove to my parents' house, will in hand. I didn't ask for tea. I didn't sit down. "Why did you lie to me?" I asked, voice tight. He left it all to me. Every penny, every inch. My mom's face, drained of color. My dad's jaw locked. He was old, my father snapped. He was confused. "You think that paper means anything?" He was manipulated. "By who?" I shot back. "He wrote this a year before he died. Sound mind. proper witnesses. What did you do with it? That's when my mother broke. We had to step in. Haley was drowning. And you were always so cold. So distant, he didn't understand. You stole from me, I whispered. You stole everything he left behind. My dad stood, fists clenched. You're lucky we even let you see it. But I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. They'd buried more than Pop's body, and now everything was about to rise. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at my kitchen table rereading the will like it might change. But the more I stared at it, the more one question echoed in my head: how did they get away with it? The answer came 2 days later. I took the copy of the will to the county probate office. After some digging and a few sideways glances, the clerk handed me a file, a different will, one that left equal shares to my mother and aunt. No mention of me, no signature match, no proper witnesses. A clear, clumsy forgery. They had filed a fake version, buried the real one. And no one questioned it because no one expected someone like me to fight. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Grandpa's retirement accounts, liquidated within 2 weeks of his death, his savings transferred into a joint account with my mother's name on it. The timeline lined up perfectly with Haley's new house, her over-the-top wedding, and the renovation work I saw months ago. I was funding the golden child's fantasy life, and I hadn't even known it. I didn't want to believe my own family could do this. But then, Mrs. Carson, Pop's old neighbor, called me quietly one evening. I shouldn't be saying this, she whispered, but your mom and dad were talking about this before he died. They said they'd handle everything and make sure the money went to the right place. They planned this, I asked, my voice hollow. They did, she said. 4 months. I felt gutted, like they hadn't just stolen money, they'd erased me, like I never mattered. Not to them, not even in death, for a moment. I considered cutting ties and walking away. But then a lawyer friend told me something that flipped the switch completely. What they did? That's not just betrayal, he said. That's felony fraud. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just personal, it was criminal. I called a meeting, not out of respect, out of formality. I wanted to give them one last chance to explain, to own what they did. We sat at my parents' kitchen table, the same one I ate dinner at growing up, now warped from years of heat and lies. I placed a folder on the table. Inside copies of both wills, bank statements, and a letter from the probate court. I've spoken to an attorney, I said calmly. I'm filing a petition. What you did was fraud. I'm taking this to court. My dad scoffed before I even finished. You'd sue your own family over some paperwork. My mom's eyes welled up instantly weaponized tears. You're going to ruin this family? For what? Because Haley got a house. You're bitter. You've always been bitter. Got everything, I snapped. And you lied to my face? She needed it, Mom shouted, slamming her palm on the table. You don't understand the pressure she's under. And what about me? I said. What about what he wanted? That's when my phone buzzed. It was Haley. You're disgusting, the text read. You're trying to rip us apart. For money. You've always been jealous and small. Guess that hasn't changed. I didn't reply. I stood up, grabbed the folder, and said, You'll be served within the week. My dad chuckled darkly. You have no idea what you're getting into. Courts don't care about little boys with grudges. Maybe not, I said. But they care about fraud. And then I left, heart pounding, knees weak but not backing down. 3 days later, a process server delivered official court notices to their doorstep. Suddenly, it wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was war. Discovery was brutal, but it was also vindicting. My lawyer, Jenna, was sharp as hell and didn't waste time. Within weeks, she had subpoenaed financial records, asset transfers, and the original probate filings. What we found was worse than I imagined. Multiple withdrawals from Grandpa's retirement accounts had been timed days after his death. Large checks written directly to my parents. Wire transfers flagged for home repairs. When we requested bank footage, one clip even showed my dad signing with Grandpa's name on a withdrawal slip. But the smoking gun. The will they submitted, the fake one, was supposedly notarized by a woman named Karen Delaney. We tracked her down. When she was brought in for questioning, she stared at the document for 3 seconds and said, "I've never seen this man before in my life." That one sentence detonated their entire defense. We also brought in testimony from Pop's caregiver, Maria, who told the court she'd overheard my parents arguing weeks before his death something about timing and cleaning things up before probate hits. She cried when she said it. Your grandfather trusted them. He had no idea. As each piece of evidence stacked up, my parents' tone changed. The smugness vanished. Their lawyer reached out with a settlement offer low, 6 figures, in exchange for dismissing the case and sealing the records. Jenna looked at me across the table. It's not a bad offer. You'd walk away with more than they expected. But I shook my head. This was never about the money. It was about being erased, lied to, cheated by the people who were supposed to protect me. I don't want their scraps, I said. I want the truth to stand. In public, on record. They took everything from me once. Now I was taking it all back by the book. If I thought they'd stop at lying in court, I was wrong. Once they realized I wasn't backing down, my parents went nuclear. They called my aunt and uncle, told them I was sick and obsessed with money, claimed I was suing the family for sympathy and trying to steal Haley's future, that I was exploiting Pop's death for a payout. Word spread. Like fire at a gas station, my cousin unfollowed me on every platform. My Aunt Carol, who once called me her bonus son, texted to say I was no longer welcome at her wedding. This is tearing the family apart. You need to stop. I wanted to scream. I didn't start this, but no one wanted truth. They wanted peace, and I had become the disruption. Friends started pulling away too. I'd canceled dinner plans last minute because of emergency filings or depositions, and the invites just stopped coming. I'd vent about the court drama, and people would shift uncomfortably. Say that sounds rough, and never follow up. Then I lost my job. Too many days missed. Too much stress. My manager said he understood, but the company had business needs. Severance. 2 weeks. That didn't even cover my rent. I started selling off furniture, canceled my gym membership, then my internet. Ate canned soup for days. I was weeks away from eviction. One night, I sat on my bare mattress, surrounded by boxes of evidence and unopened mail, and just cried ugly, full-body sobs. I felt hollow, betrayed, not just by them, but by everyone I thought cared. I had done everything right. And still, somehow, I was the villain in their story. For the first time, I asked myself, is this even worth it? But deep down, I knew the answer. They wanted me broken, silent. I wasn't giving them that satisfaction. The courtroom smelled like old wood and cold air. I sat at the plaintiff's table, palms sweating through my shirt cuffs, staring straight ahead as my parents whispered behind their lawyer. Like it was all still some kind of family game? It wasn't. The trial had lasted for days. For days of bank records, signature analysis, caregiver testimony, and that notary's damning statement. The courtroom had been tense. But today, the final day, was thick with something else. Judgment. The judge adjusted her glasses, cleared her throat, and began reading the verdict aloud. The court finds that the document submitted to probate, the defendants, was fraudulent in origin, and that the authentic will submitted by the plaintiff is valid and binding. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. You are hereby granted full control of the estate, including property, savings, and remaining retirement accounts. Additionally, the defendants are ordered to pay damages for willful fraud and emotional distress. It hit me like thunder. My mom gasped. My dad stared forward, stone-faced, his jaw twitching. But Haley cracked. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed, her shoulders shaking in a way that wasn't grief, but rage. The judge wasn't finished. This was not a misunderstanding, she said sharply, glaring at my parents. This was egregious deception and abuse of the legal system, of familial trust, and of a man's final wishes. Further criminal investigation is not off the table. I looked down at the folder in front of me, the same copy of Pop's will I had clutched since the beginning. I had done it. I had honored him. Not just legally, but morally. As the bailiff called for order, I stood and walked out of the courtroom. Alone, but for the first time. I didn't feel alone at all. Everything had shifted. The first thing I did was visit Pop's house. It had been sitting vacant since he dyed overgrown hedges, paint peeling, rust creeping along the railings. But to me, it still smelled like Sunday mornings and black coffee. I stood on the porch, key in hand, and whispered, "We're home." Using the estate funds, I restored it, not to flip it, to preserve it. I painted the walls the same shade of deep green Pop always loved, replaced the broken porch swing, and even found a vintage record player like the one he used to keep near the fireplace. Every nail I hammered felt like stitching a piece of him back into the world. Then came the hard part. Haley's house, technically, it wasn't hers. The title had been in Grandpa's name, and now me. My lawyer drafted the notice. She had 30 days to vacate. When she got it, she tried calling. 10 missed calls. Then a string of texts, first denial, then anger, then pathetic guilt trips. "You don't have to do this. Please, just let me keep it. You're heartless." I didn't reply. I sold the house within 2 weeks. That money, Maud. Part of it went to 3 charities. Pop supported one for veterans, one for cancer research, and one that gave kids free books. He would have smiled at that. As for my parents, I changed my number, blocked them on everything, moved to another city entirely. No forwarding address, no shared friends. No more being the family doormat. Not once did I get an apology, and I stopped waiting for one. Because this wasn't about fixing them, it was about freeing me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow or picking up someone else's mess. I had taken back what was mine. I wasn't giving it up again. 6 months passed in quiet. No courtrooms, no threats, no calls. Just sunlight through clean windows, books stacked beside my bed, and mornings where I woke up without a knot in my chest. Then one afternoon, I got a message from my cousin Drutha. Only one who hadn't turned his back on me. "Just so you know, your parents filed for bankruptcy. The house is gone. They're living in some cramped rental outside of town. Your dad's drinking again. Your mom cries a lot. Haley's seeing a therapist now. Says she's working on her resentment." I stared at the screen for a long time, not sure what I felt. Not joy, not revenge. Just a strange, hollow kind of justice. They had built their whole world on a lie. And when that lie collapsed, all they were left with was each other and the guilt they refused to carry for so long. I never replied to Drew. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I spent that weekend doing something that felt right. In the backyard of Pop's house, near the fence he and I used to paint together every spring, I planted a tree, a young red maple, strong and quiet. Just like him, the dirt was soft from the rain. As I patted it down, my hands stained and heart steady, I whispered, "We did it." Because this wasn't about revenge. It never was. I didn't want to watch them fall, wanted to finally rise. I didn't want power, I wanted peace. But they left me no choice, so I took everything they tried to bury and turned it into something that would grow. Something honest, something mine. And for the first time in my life, finally let go.